Hey internet friends, several months ago I provided an overview of what's happening in the land down under, discussing the history of Australia and posing the question, what's a prison? Always a prison? In that video, we briefly touched on the camps that were being built by the Australian government, and we speculated on their intended use. Today, I want to give you a little update on what's going on in Oz, as many Australians have reached out with information regarding the current state of affairs in the Upside Down world, an Upside Down world that's not too far away from an impending reality in the West. This is what the media won't tell you about Australia. Part 2. So let's get everyone up to speed just in case someone watching is unaware about what's been taking place in Australia. Basically, 2 weeks to slow the spread is dancing on top of the bar with her shirt off, spinning it above her head like a helicopter, but in the absolute worst way possible. Over the last 2 years, Australia's government has banned its citizens from leaving the country without permission, banned its citizens from entering the country, banned citizens from crossing state borders, banned citizens from traveling more than 5 kilometers from their home without permission. Also, in the name of stopping the spread, Australia has tracked a large fast food order to a party to fine guests $26,000 for an unauthorized gathering, deployed the military to enforce lockdowns, deployed helicopters to threaten young healthy men playing soccer, told people not to talk to their neighbors, executed several dogs to prevent rescue workers from coming to the town, arrested a pregnant mother in front of her kids for posting an anti-lockdown rally on social media, and caused 4 newborns to die after being denied heart surgery because of COVID travel restrictions. Big thank you to this Sovereign Man article for really laying it all out for us. All these details I'm referencing, it's from the Sovereign Man article, so well done. And now, it's illegal to plan, publicize, or participate in protests in Australia. Mr. Event 201 himself, Bill Gates, has praised Australia's response to COVID, while Fauci has said that Australia's system of control has been excellent, and he called them a world leader on containment and management of emerging variants. So while everyone was locked in their homes under medical tyranny in Oz, what did the government do? Well, they built some camps, naturally, as you do. According to Unheard News host Freddie Sayers' special on Australia's camps, quote, Australia's latest policy is to build special camps, quarantine camps, to which infected and suspected infected people are moved. The biggest of these camps is called Howard Springs. It houses up to 2,000 inmates, surrounded by tall fences and carefully policed against attempts to escape. It's been described as the gold standard of such camps and is being replicated across Australia. End quote. In a special, Sayers showcased a video from a 26-year-old woman who was forced into one of these camps without ever having contracted COVID. But one of her friends tested positive, and authorities came to her home after her friend received a positive diagnosis, identifying her as a close contact. And authorities asked her if she had done a COVID test. This young woman lied, saying she had, but in reality she hadn't, and that's when police officers blocked her driveway. They said, quote, you're getting taken away and you have no choice. You're going to Howard Springs. You can either come with us now and we'll put you in the back of the divvy van, or you can have a choice to get your own COVID cab. She refused, voicing that she was not giving any consent to any of this, yet officers ordered her to pack a bag, and she was told she would be released from the camp once she tested negative. So this woman was forced into the back of a van and transported to Howard Springs, and upon arrival, she was told she would have to stay there for the 14-day quarantine duration, even though she tested negative 3 times during the 14-day period. At one point, she was reprimanded for leaving her cabin without a mask and was threatened a $5,000 fine. And at another point, she was offered a Valium to calm her down. This young woman's account wasn't the only story to make headlines. Several days ago, 3 teenage boys ages 15, 16, and 17, who had also tested negative, were arrested after escaping from the Howard Springs camp in the middle of the night. The press has played a huge role in promoting the Howard Springs camp as a voluntary oasis for all your quarantine needs. But people don't get taken by police or by military in a sketchy van somewhere voluntary. People don't get arrested for leaving somewhere voluntary. Reported on November 15th, more than 130 million taxpayer dollars will be used to upgrade Howard Springs facility over the next year. With this news alongside the emerging news of variants, is there an end in sight to all the madness? What is the end goal of these camps in Australia? Back in 1798, there was an Irishman named Philip Cunningham who had had enough. He was done with the English lording over Ireland and all of their oppressive policies, so he, alongside 50,000 of his fellow Irishmen, began a violent uprising against Great Britain. And what happened? Well, it's not a happy feel-good story. They lost, bigly. The British rounded up all the rebels, Cunningham among them, and shipped them off to a British penal colony in the South Pacific, a place that was referred to as New Holland, but today we just call it Australia. On the way over, Cunningham and his fellow prisoners managed to take over the ship, but they failed at successfully doing that too, and the British awarded Cunningham 100 lashes for the trouble. But he bounced back. Years later, in March of 1804, Cunningham and 300 of his fellow prisoners launched another rebellion against the British jailers, and this time, they made some headway. The rebellion was so brutal that the British governor declared martial law. A tool as old as time, I guess, when the government begins losing their grip over the people. A tool which isn't limited to Australia at all. But perhaps these lockdowns have been so fiercely effective in locking down the population in Australia because in 1996, following a tragedy in Tasmania, the Australian government began to crack down on firearm ownership, purchasing back nearly 659,000 newly prohibited firearms from its citizens. There was a second buyback in 2003 where 70,000 more firearms were destroyed, and Australians effectively allowed their government to take a huge chunk out of their means of self-defense in the government's effort to, quote, reduce firearm deaths. They just handed them over. Now the Australian government doesn't allow firearm ownership for personal protection. Apparently that's not a good enough reason to get their stamp of approval. You must have a reason like hunting to get that stamp of approval. Marinate on that information for a moment while we reflect on what's happened in the 2 weeks to slow the spread that has turned into almost 2 years. What does the future hold for the beautiful country of Australia? What does the future hold for the rest of us? As I make this video, Paris police are checking for proof of V while diners are eating. Nevada has announced that it will be the first state in the US to impose a surcharge on the unV'd workers to the tune of $55 a month. The approved proposal also stipulates a surcharge of $175 a month for workers' spouses, partners, and dependents 18 and older. Australia is leading the way in lockdowns and medical tyranny. I genuinely hope they fight it tooth and nail for themselves and for the rest of the world. What is happening in Australia will happen to us if we continue to consent to the insanity. If we wait, it will be too late to stop the looming one world government that is so drunk on power. They need to be humbled, and soon. And that's what the media won't tell you about Australia. Let me know what you think, internet friends. You know I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel on Patreon. Bye!